Hello there, friends. I'm your host, a cozy paper-cut cat with a real nose for mysteries. Look around. My cardboard owl and paper pup friends have already gathered by the fire as we open up a very special pastel pop-up book today. But fair warning, this isn't your ordinary sleepy time storybook. No, today we're diving deep into an analysis of the surprisingly grim, spine-chilling historical truths hiding right inside this innocent nursery rhymes we all grew up singing. So, are you and your paper paws ready? Let's turn that first page. We all know this one, right? The classic rhyme, Oranges and Lemons. It starts off sounding like this happy, bouncy little tune counting church bells. But then, you hit those final lines. Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head. I mean, seriously? I couldn't believe it when I dug into the sources, but this is definitely not a cozy bedtime story. It's actually rooted in the dark, looming shadow of London's notorious Old Newgate prison. It's detailing the crushing reality of debt, brutal punishments, and, yep, public hangings right outside the prison walls. Doesn't sound so sweet anymore, does it? Okay, moving right along to Section 1, Plagues and Posies.
Now be honest, did you believe this rumor too? That Ring Around the Rosie is secretly about the Black Death, or the Great Plague of London. It is literally one of the most famous urban legends out there. The story goes that the rosy is a rash, the posies were carried to hide the smell of sickness, and we all fall down, well, that symbolizes death and cremated ashes. It sounds completely convincing, right? It just fits the rhyme perfectly.
Well, let's dive right into this, because according to the research of folklorist Stephen Winnick, that dark, morbid legend, it's entirely a myth. Seriously, completely made up. It turns out this was originally just a joyful European courtship game. Children would dance around in a circle, and the last person to squat down had to face a quote-unquote penalty, which was usually just bowing to or kissing another kid. And in traditional European culture, those posies had absolutely nothing to do with plague protection. They were simply a symbol of pure joy and love. I gotta say, my paper-cut squirrel friend sitting next to me is very relieved to hear this one is actually just a happy, innocent game. Let's flip the page to Section 2, Executions and Blind Mice. So when the story of 3 little blind mice pops up in our book, followed quickly by the farmer's wife chasing them with a carving knife, things get a little grim. It's widely believed by many that the farmer's wife is actually a hidden, coded reference to the 16th century English Queen Mary I, historically known as Bloody Mary. The popular theory tells us that these 3 blind mice represent 3 Protestant bishops who secretly plotted against her, and as punishment, she supposedly had them burned at the stake. Yikes. But here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the myth completely falls apart. If you actually check the original lyrics of the rhyme, they don't refer to Queen Mary whatsoever. Instead, they specifically mention a figure named Dame Julian. And the historical reality? Dame Julian of Norwich lived a full 2 centuries before Queen Mary was even born. It really just goes to show you how easily a gripping, gruesome myth can completely overshadow the actual historical facts.
Turning now to Section 3, Hidden Taxes and Canons.
Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. It's such a cozy, classic line. We all know it, we all love it. But right behind this generous, chubby little black sheep in our pop-up book hides a pretty grim story of deep economic hardship and absolute frustration for the lower classes.
And this brilliantly illustrates that crushing reality. Back in 12th century England, wealth heavily depended on the wool industry. This rhyme, it was actually a bitter, sarcastic complaint from impoverished farmers. A massive, devastating wool tax meant the king, who is the master in the song, took a staggering 33% of the profits. The church, the dame, took another 33%. That left only a tiny, meager third for the little boy, who represents the poor, hardworking farmers, just barely scraping by to survive. And then, of course, there's Humpty Dumpty, bouncing into the story as this fragile, clumsy egg teetering on a brick wall. But when you look at the brutal reality of the English Civil War between 1642 and 1651, Humpty Dumpty wasn't some delicate egg at all. Humpty was actually a massive, highly destructive royalist cannon. No way, right? Here's how the story really goes. The royalists mounted this colossal weapon on top of a church tower. Just picture this. 11 long weeks of relentless, heavy cannon fire. And then, boom, the tower finally shatters. The massive cannon crashes to the ground below, breaking into pieces. All the king's horses, representing the cavalry, and all the king's men, the infantry,
desperately tried to repair their mightiest weapon, but they literally couldn't put Humpty together again, and that failure led directly to their crushing defeat. It's a war story, not an egg story.
Now, what about Pop Goes the Weasel? It sounds like a cute little animal playing hide and seek, but in 19th century British rhyming slang, a weasel and stoat actually meant a coat, and popping, that was street slang for pawning an item. So the song actually describes the desperate poverty of the time. People were so incredibly broke they had to pawn their own winter coats just to buy the cheapest food available, like tuppenny rice and treacle. Pop goes the coat right into the local pawn shop.
Almost at the end of the book, Section 4, Jack and Jill. I was absolutely shocked to find out that a simple tumble down a hill could be linked to so much historical chaos. Tracing the theories behind Jack and Jill is honestly like trying to solve a time-traveling mystery. Some historians argue it represents the 1509 execution of two of Henry VIII's ministers. Others firmly believe it's a 17th century protest against an unfair liquor tax, where a jack was an eighth of a pint, a gill was a quarter pint, and the tax brought the measurements tumbling down. And it gets even wilder. Some folks tie Jack's broken crown directly to the 1793 beheading of King Louis XVI during the French Revolution, with Jill representing Marie Antoinette.
But you know, the truth might actually be much closer to home. Over in a small Somerset village called Kilmersdon, local legend insists on a much more grounded, though deeply tragic reality. They say Jack and Jill were a real, unwed, expecting couple. Tragically, Jack was killed by a falling rock at the local quarry, and Jill passed away shortly after, either from childbirth or a literal broken heart. Whichever theory you look at, this innocent little trip up the hill to fetch water is deeply, deeply sorrowful.
And finally, Section 5, Echoes of History.
So what does this all mean? The crucial point is this. As the famous mystery writer Agatha Christie observed in her play The Mousetrap, children are just naturally drawn to the tragic and the macabre. It's a bit weird, but it's true. Psychologists believe that packaging these incredibly dark themes, executions, disease, poverty, and death, into catchy, colorful little songs gives children a safe, controlled environment to process fear. Without even realizing it, we're passing down humanity's history, our survival instincts, and our deepest anxieties in the most primal way possible.
I'll be honest, my paper-cut paws are definitely sweating a bit now, and even my cardboard dog friend is hiding behind the pop-up book. We've discovered today that these innocent melodies are actually historical codes left behind by our ancestors. So I have to ask, next time you hear a nursery rhyme, will you suddenly stop and wonder who really died? Thank you so much for opening this book and joining our deep dive today. Catch you next time.
Knowledge grows through sharing. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe as we continue to grow together.